Welcome back to the Art of Boat Building, and this is the beginning of Season 4. Now, I had mentioned in the last video that I'm going to be building 2 kayaks during this season. The first one is a stitch and glue kayak, and the second is a strip plank kayak. Now, both of these are kits that come from Chesapeake Light Craft. The stitch and glue kayak I'll be building is a Wood Duck 12. I chose it as it is a great beginner's boat. The panels are precision cut by CNC machines and has stitched holes already pre-drilled. And it comes with detailed instructions. The strip plank kayak is a little auk. This is an 11-foot kayak. Its small size makes it easy to handle. If you're new to strip planking, this is a great choice. Experience is needed as it comes with very minimal instructions. Both kits come with all of the parts needed, including glass and epoxy. So in this episode, we're going to get started building the Wood Duck 12. Now what you see here are the parts for the kayak. On this side here, you can see are all of the parts for the hull, and on this side here are all of the parts for the deck. So in order to get started with the Kayak 12, what we first need to do is to join the pieces together. Now I have already done that because I actually purchased this kit over some 5 years ago. And at that point, I got started with it and then shelved it because I really got interested in building the Haven. So the time has come now to get it put together. So what we can see here are the 4 basic panels that are needed to construct the hull. Also, we would need a transom and a bulkhead. Now, one of the things that's really great about having these manning benches, like I had mentioned in the last episode, is that you can see how it was really easily to extend my 8-foot bench into a longer one to accommodate the length of these panels. So as I said, the first thing we needed to do was to put the panels together. So these pieces come with a puzzle piece, and you can see this sort of CNC cutout puzzle piece that's in here that you basically snap them together like a puzzle. Now, one of the nice things about these kits is it's impossible to put the wrong panels together because the way these are oriented, it'll only go together in one way. Now the way I put these together was with some epoxy, and so you can see on the flip side here where I've got a piece of epoxy cloth on there. So basically what I did is I laid a piece of plastic underneath here and then epoxied it and pushed it together, and then saturated that piece of cloth across there. Now the other way that you can put this together without using epoxy is to use some CA glue, and that actually works just as well as the epoxy to hold it together temporarily until you can get a fiberglass cloth on the back side. So the first step is mainly because these have actually been sitting for 5 years or so. I'm going to go over and give them a nice sand and clean them all up, and I'm going to do that with my palm sander. Well, now that I've got them all sanded, and I sanded them with a 220 grit sandpaper, and you notice that I kept moving on it. I wasn't really trying to take very much material off. The only place I really worked a little more is where that epoxy joint was. Now the next step is to bevel the edges of the pieces as they go together. So if they have 2 square edges coming together, you're going to have a gap on the outside. So what we want to do is to bevel that so that gap gets cleaned up. Now, it's not too important that the inside is completely flush because we'll be putting an epoxy fillet in there. Now the other thing are these little registration tabs that, I don't know, registration tabs is the right word, but I'm assuming what those are part of the CNC process so that the pieces were still attached to the waste material. So what we need to do is we need to remove those little tabs, and the best way to do that is with a block plane. So we just go along it like so. Till we have it gone. Do this one. So that's the first thing I'm going to do is go along and take all of those tabs off. And then I'm going to flip them over. So right now it's the outside of the hull showing. So what I'll do is I'll flip this over like so, and I'm going to start down here at the keel, beveling that off. Bevels are also described in the manual that comes with the kit. You can see that on the ends here at the bow and transom that it is a greater bevel than a midship here. So this is also a good gauge of knowing what does need to be. There's this gray line here, our shadow area, that indicates which parts of the panels need to be beveled. So one of the questions is, how do you know how much to bevel off of here? Well, here at the stern of the kayak, I've been a little bit more aggressive because these pieces need to come together at a pretty tight point like this. In fact, this is the transom for the kayak, and you can see that this will be attached here at this point. So that is basically what it feathers down to into this point. So that's why I'm being a little bit more aggressive of a bevel here. Now to finish those up, you can see where you can see a little bit of the veneers, and that's one of the way that you can tell if you're doing it evenly, is if those veneers, glue joints of the veneers are equal. Like here, you can see it's been dug in just a little more. So what I'm doing is I'm taking 80 grit sandpaper and finishing up these tight ones and basically trying to go away from the edge. So I can preserve that nice knife edge there. So if you're wanting to check yourself about the other bevels, now this is the bulkhead here, and it goes right about at this point here. Now you can tell because this distance here is the same as the bottom of the hull. So this is the keel here. So that bevel right there is what we're trying to achieve with those two pieces coming together. So you can see it's not very much that you need to take off. And the contrast would be a more severe one that is here closer to the stern, and you can see it fits like so, and it is a little bit more aggressive. So what we need to do is to basically eyeball this and do what we call a rolling bevel. So it gets a little more aggressive and then less aggressive when it's in the center or midship of the kayak. Well, after I finish planing all of those edges to that bevel, then I'm using some 80 grit sandpaper on a block to kind of clean that up a little bit like so. Now that we've got all of the pieces beveled properly, what we need to start doing is get ready to stitch the hull together. The kit came with a box that also had a lot of extra pieces in here. What we need right now are the copper wires, but I don't know if you can see in there, there's all kinds of tape that I used for the puzzle pieces, glass tape. It also came with a glass cloth that is needed for it, and also it came with these pieces, which are the seat. So let's get started with these wires. So the wires come coiled up like this, and what we need are some 2 to 3 inch long pieces of wire like this. So they have, Chesapeake Light Craft has coiled these in such a way that if we divide this into thirds, then we'll have the right amount of length. So that's basically what I'm going to do now, is just to cut these into thirds. And we'll store these in a little container like that. I'm just going to do 2 of the 5 spools right now. I can always cut more later. One of the things I like to do is to go through and make sure that the wire fits through the holes. Now, you can see that one won't go through very well. So then I just take a little 1/16 inch drill and just open it up a little bit. So one of the things for sure is where there's an epoxy patch like this, is that the wire is probably not going to go through because of the epoxy there. So there we definitely need to drill it out. Like so. Now on the other panel, I can actually see the little dot right here. So that I know that I need to drill right there. So now that we know all of our holes are nice and clear, and we can stack the pieces that we want to make sure that the inside is facing the inside of the 2 pieces. And then we want to take a piece of wire and start stitching. And we go through the top and come through the bottom, and then twist them together. Wherever there is a double hole like this, that's where either the mold or the bulkhead goes. So we ignore those 2 at this point. So one of the things I discovered is to not twist all of them, to just get them all put through the holes first. That way I'm able to lift my finger up and be able to find that second hole in there. Once we get to the end, we can start twisting the wires. So you notice I didn't put any wires here at the bow, because we'll push those together once we get the pieces opened up. You may be wondering how tight to make these. You should only make them as tight as you can do with your fingers. So the the boat is oriented right now that this is the stern and that's the bow. So I'm going to start with the stern form. And what we want to do is just open this up like a book. And where these double holes are, we need to put this form in there like that. So I'm going to take the wire and go through this part of the hole form. And then where we have these double holes here, I'm going to put one in each hole. And then we'll loosely tighten that up with our fingers. And the next one, I'm going to go up one side and then through the form. And back down the other hole. Now we'll do the other side. The next form is the aft bulkhead. Now there's a nice side and a not nice side. So you want the nice side to be facing into the cockpit. And in order to get this pushed down so it'll hold it while I'm doing that, I'm going to take a small stick like this. Let's see. And put it on here. Clamp it on. And then push the form down so that it's about where it wants to be, and clamp that. And it's not going to hold it perfectly, but it's going to hold it well enough that I can get that form in there. After I got the hull forms and bulkheads attached, I then started amidship and alternatingly moved fore and aft to attach the side panels. With the hull assembled, starting at midship, I tightened the wires, again alternating fore and aft as I had done before. Well, I've got both of the side panels on now, and I've gone along and tightened all of the wires up to this point. And what I need to do now is to work on the transom and the bow. Now I've got a full confession to make to you all. If you'll remember, back in the video, I had mentioned that at the far end of the studio is where the bow was, and that the transom was facing this direction. the boat is oriented right now that this is the stern and that's the bow. So what I started to do was to wire up the transom and the bow, but I did it backwards because usually when I have all of my boats that I have built, I've always had the bow facing this direction. And this was the other way, so I just assumed that this was the bow. And in fact, it's a transom. So what I'm going to do to help my sanity, and also so that you know that it looks like I may be doing it backwards, is that I'm going to flip the boat around. So this particular model, because the transom, or I should say the stern and the bow are very similarly shaped. They're just very minor differences, and those showed up pretty drastically when I tried to put the transom on the bow. Anyway, that's what I'm going to do next, is I'm going to flip the boat around and then we'll start working on the bow. All right. So we're at the bow end here now, and the first thing that the instructions suggest you do is to wet down the panels so that they will accept a bend a little better. And to pull these two pieces together, I've got some little pieces of sandpaper. This is double stick sandpaper that I've folded over. So what we want to do is to hold these on here, get a clamp ready. And go down here. The sandpaper helps the clamp not wanting to slide. I'll get that wired up. Now we'll do the same thing back here at the transom. I also wetted the transom as it needed a slight bend. I applied some heat and then let it cool with that curve. So that completes the transom. I'm going to leave this clamp on there so that I let this dry completely. Now, one of the things I need to do is to sight down the boat like this and make sure that all of the bulkheads and the transom are all equal, and I can see that they are. So that's it for the hull for our Wood Duck 12. Now in the next episode, we're going to be working on assembling the deck, and we'll get the deck fitted to the hull. So that's all coming up in the next episode. So as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you the next time on The Art of Boat Building.